Okay, this is Jacob Schmitt with deerhuntingschool.com, doing a video analysis here of a property for Will. Will, I appreciate you letting me take a look at this, and I hope I can help you out best I can, point you in, give you some few ideas and stuff, and kind of explain what I see here on the on the map. So, if you look here, you can notice right off that this is hilly, very hilly terrain. It's pretty rugged. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on it here. I mean, it's pretty easy to see. I mean, this is some pretty steep stuff. I'm going to go with a blue here. I mean, as you see these draws that run down through here, this ridge line here, and there's actually a big draw that runs down here. There's no doubt, that this is steep. And I'm going to show here right quick Cal Topo, the map on it. And I don't know if you're not familiar with Cal Topo or anybody watching this, I've got the shaded relief on. And you can look at a topo map, and you can tell by how close these lines are, how steep things are. So basically, like this here's, you see how close these lines are here compared to here. It's a lot steeper here than it is here. Okay, and the shaded relief just kind of, in a glance, you can see where the really, really steeper areas are, like this red stuff. That's really, really steep here. It just basically showing how steep it is. And there's a color grade you can do for it. If you go to Cal Topo, you can go over to the right. It's off the screen right now, but you can go in and you can select and put on shaded relief and stuff, and it shows this. But nevertheless, when it gets to red, that's nearly impossible for a human to walk up and down. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's nearly. I mean, it's going to take some serious, all this here, right here, is just almost impossible for a human being to walk up or down. Well, you could walk down it probably, but it's going to be dangerous, So anyways, that's just, how steep this property here is. So, and Will, I'm sure you already know that. And the deer on areas like this, they tend to do certain things, and it's, there's never and always and never and never. But for the most part, for the general most part, when you have a hilly terrain like this, you've got a ridge that runs down like this, and then you've got points that come off of it. Here, you got a little ridge, and there's points that come off here. You got, a little point right here. There's a little point here. You get the ridge coming down. You got another, like a little secondary ridge. It comes off the main ridge and comes down into this point. These deer typically will bed on these points like this. They'll bed somewhere on these points for the most part, in these areas. And I know that a lot of this I'm drawing here, especially over in here's off your property, but nevertheless, the deer will bed there. And if and I know this one's off your property, but if you go down this point here, this ridge top here, it comes down and there's a point here. Depending on the time of the year and depending on the timing, dictates how the deer will move through the area. Early season, late winter, stuff like that. Through the summer, these deer and bucks, they will get on a point or one of these ridge tops. Sometimes they'll bed on these ridge tops, especially if you get thicket up here on the edge of the ridge top, and the wind's coming over top of the ridge. They like to bed with the wind to their back, looking down the hill where they can see. They use it for a vantage point. I'm going to erase all this right quick, but we're going to go back to Google Earth. Okay, so now that we see that, kind of what the terrain looks like, this is very steep. So now that we're looking here on Google Earth, I can kind of show you what I'm talking about, what they like to do. And like I said earlier, there's never and always, never and never. But sometimes they'll bed on these ridge tops, on the edge. Usually they don't bed dead center. They kind of get out to the side where the wind's coming over it to their back, and they're looking down a hill. The points are no different. They'll usually bed on these points. And as we're looking right now, north is here, south, east. Now let me draw it here. And then west. Okay, so they're typically going to bed on these points when you have some type of a south wind. Okay, and I know that's off your property, but that's typically where they're going to bed on these points down in here. Is some type of a south wind where they're going to bed. Let me erase all this. I'm going to. Okay, for south, some type of southerly wind. Okay, they're typically for the most part they're going to bed, like this, where the point comes off, wind coming over the top, and they're going to bed out in here. They're going to bed in these areas for the most part. Here on your neighboring property. They may bed, up in here on this ridge, usually on that side there is where your activity is going to be on a southerly wind. Okay. So now we're going to I'm going to erase this, and we're going to put, say, an east wind in here. Okay, an east wind. So basically, when you have an east wind, you've got wind blowing like that. Now, I mean, it could be a northeast, it could be a southeast, but I'm talking about some type of southerly wind. Not southerly, but an easterly wind. It's coming, for the most part, the wind's coming this direction of some sort. Whether it's like that, or like that. And that's the same way with the south wind. I mean, where these deer are going to bed, they're going to try to bed with the wind coming over to their back, looking out down the hill. That way they can use all their senses. You can't get from behind them because they can smell you. You can't get from in front of them because they can see you. If anybody watching this hunts a hilly terrain like this, if you'll get up on these points, you'll walk out. I'm going to go back to CalTopo right quick. If you get up on any of these points, early season, they can see, pretty dang good on them. But when you get into late season, when the leaves come off, these deer can see you. I mean, they can literally bed, on this point right here, which I know this is off the property, but they could bed on this point and see this road. Okay. So there's no way that anybody out here is going to be able to access and get to these deer like this. Okay, if the wind is coming from the south and they're bedded on that point, you can't get to that deer without it either smelling you or seeing you. Because if he's bedded on this point, it can see this valley, all out through here, and the wind coming behind it. The key is depending on the time of the year, is getting in there, figuring out where that deer's exiting and leaving, hunting on an off wind as the deer comes out. The thing is, early season, late season, these deer will, for the most part, they'll just stay on one particular point. Okay. And they may come over and be on this one for a little while. And they'll just bed in different positions, because if you've got a southerly wind, this deer can bed here. Erase this. A south wind, they can bed anywhere here. You get a southeasterly wind, they can, bed here. You get a northeasterly wind, they can drop over this side of the ridge here. Did I say northeasterly? I meant southwest wind. They can drop over to here. And then you get a north wind. These deer are going to want to bed, in areas over here. They could pull up on the side of this. If it is a say a north westerly wind, they could even, drop over in here. Something they're going to want to bet on these points. Basically, the point is the deer want the wind to their back where they can see down, they can use the eyesight and everything, and they'll do it year round. Okay, the key is during the rut, you've got deer bedded on all these points, and not every point is going to have deer on it all the time. Hunting pressure, if you got a lot of hunting pressure and people start pressuring a certain area, it's going to push the deer out over to another area. Let's just say, over here you got a lot of guys that moves in here and or a couple guys that move in here and they just start hunting this ridge and stuff in here pretty hard. They're going to push them deer out. Them deer are going to go find somewhere that they're not pressured. They're not being bothered. Let's say that a guy here, he comes in and his entrance is right on this point where these deer are bedding. Well, they're going to move. They're not going to lay there while he's in and out every day hunting. It's just gonna move them. They're gonna move, and they may come over here or whatever, but they're gonna adjust to that. But if they're, no matter what happens, as the rut comes in, you're gonna have deer bedded on these points, okay, and you're gonna have bucks that are cruising these sides of these ridges and stuff, and they're gonna be checking these areas, okay, and that's when they're a lot more vulnerable in these areas. Because they're actually moving. That's when you can get in there and you can get set up on some of these ambush areas where these points meet. You got areas like this and like this. You got this point here and this point here, and it kind of right in here, is a spot, or up in here. This area right in here is an area where, during the rut, bucks are going to be a little more apt to cruise through here. And this would be an area where you would want to hunt on a southerly wind because most likely your deer are going to be bedded in these areas. Okay, on a northerly wind, you're going to want to try to get over here on this side of the ridge, and hunt because your wind's coming like this. Let me erase all this mess. Your wind's coming like this. The deer, for the most part, are going to try to bed on areas over in here. They're going to try to bed on areas over in here, points and stuff. They may bed here where that wind's coming to their back. And this is just a straight north wind, but this is just an example. I mean, here you got wind like this. They're going to bed in this areas. You got this point here. They may bed here on the side of this ridge. North wind here, you're gonna get some bedding. Looks like there's a point here. I got it almost. Well, you can't really see it on the map, but you're gonna get some bedding possibly in here. And these bucks are gonna cruise these areas. We're gonna go back to Google Earth here in just a second, but where all this kind of comes together, you got. On a north wind, I would probably be trying to get back toward the back of your property on that point. This is actually a really good area no matter what, and we're going to show you that on Google Earth in a second. And I did the best I could to outline. Now, this is rut hunting. This is where these bucks are going from bedding area to bedding area to bedding area. They're cruising, they're checking, they're scent checking. You've got thermals in the morning most of the day that's going to be rising up these hills. If you got scent coming, wind, on a southerly wind, the wind's going to be blowing like this. You're going to get a circular thing. These bucks are going to cruise in that area. And I killed a nice buck this year doing exactly that. He was scent checking the bedding area. He was cruising up, and he come past me, and I killed him. It was the biggest buck I had on camera, other than one I had earlier in the season that another guy killed. It was the biggest buck there. He was not a monster, but it's the biggest buck I had on camera. I'm gonna hunt something, but he was doing exactly this. And I've had several encounters of deer doing the exact same thing, bucks, and they use in the rut, they'll use the wind to their advantage where they can smell, scent check these areas, but they're going to cover more ground. That's what makes it, to me, these are in the rut. These are the best areas to hunt in a rut. When I say the best, one of the best type areas. When I look at hilly terrain like this, I think rut. I mean, they're almost just easy to hunt during the rut. But you got to get in there and you got to spend time. It's not like you're going to go in every single time and deer are just going to be all over it. Most of the time, these really hilly areas like this, you've got a little bit lower deer numbers. Deer density is a little bit lower. You don't have as many deer. You're probably not going to see 20 deer every time, although I hunt a piece of public property that I have seen 20 deer in one day, hunting stuff like this. So it's, but I'm using hunting pressure to my advantage on that. Will, you have, I measured this out to be like 86, 90 acres, something like that. So 80, 90 acres, you've got to be a little bit more careful. I'm hunting a 1,000,000-acre public property, okay? If I mess it up, I just go to another area. I read the map so well in areas like this that if I'm hunting an area like this and I mess it up, I just go over here to another area that looks really awesome. Early season, I would be careful hunting this. I'm not saying don't hunt it. I would definitely hunt it if I had a peg on a deer. If I felt like, and you said you were new to bow hunting, okay? If I felt like that I had a buck that was living here and I know he's there, I'm going to hunt him. He's going to most likely, he's going to be on one of these ridges or he's going to be on one of these ridges or on these points. He's going to use that ability to get up high with the wind to his back, and look out over these draws. And I have seen numerous times some bucks tend to bed more up really, really high on top of the ridges. And I have seen bucks that bed down here on these points kind of low where they could see basically nearly everything. And I can't say which one I see more. Do they bed here more or do they bed here more? I'm not sure. I know that they just seem to bed all over like that. They don't seem to bed like just like out in the middle. And I keep going back to Google Earth. I mean, Caltopo, because it shows a lot better what I'm looking at. But the deer don't seem to bed so much just like here. There's just nothing there. I mean, there could be. I mean, we're looking at Google Earth. Google Earth doesn't show a really good representation. And sometimes there may be a little hidden point there that you can't see on neither map. And they will bed on stuff like that. But it seems like that most of your deer activity is, like here, in this area, and then this area. And there will be some rubs and scrapes right on top of that ridge. But to me, that's not just, it's not that good. To me, it's better down here, just a little bit down off the top of the ridge, and it's better on this side on top of the ridge. And then these points. And I like hunting where these points run together. I'm going to go back to Caltopo here on this. It's just you can see it a lot easier. This is a hybrid map. You can see the topo map here. And I like where these points come together. We have a point here. You have a point here. This is a conversion point. It's where multiple points are running together. You got this draw here. These bucks like to cruise. I like the heads of these draws up in here, right in here. These create good funnels. Here's a good area. Where this point and then these multiple points here, you've got multiple points out in here where deer will be bedding on. And then you've got this really steep stuff here where for the most part, deer can walk up and down the red. Humans can't usually, but I have watched many a deer. I've had them on film walking up and down this stuff. And I actually had one. I seen him 2 or 3 days in a row. And actually, I seen him 2 days in a row. I don't remember. I may have seen him the first day. I ended up killing him up on top of the ridge. I'm not on top of it, but up on the side of the mountain. But he was, what he was doing, there was a valley. I mean, this was all woods, okay? This is a perfect example. But you had this big, huge ridge that run like this direction. Just say it's like this. Big, huge ridge running this direction. And then say it's just like this right here. You had this draw. Let me erase all this stuff so you can see. There's big ridge, running like this, which is what we're looking at. But it was on more like the side. But then you had these point like this, and then a point like this. And he was, instead of staying on the side of it, he was cruising kind of low down the ridge, down the side of the ridge. And he either had to go up and around like that, or he had to come down and around like that because it was too steep. And he, 2 or 3 days in a row, I seen him do this, and then he'd go back up the thing, which it was more steeper than this all over. And he'd go right up the red, and he'd go up. And I hunted him, and actually the first time I seen him, he walked right through my shooting lane. I was getting a Diet Mountain Dew out of my backpack. I had sat there, and I was like, well, I'm going to wait till noon. I'm going to drink my last Mountain Dew. It was all day sit. It was like November the 1st or 2nd when the bucks were really just starting to cruise really good. And I was sitting there, and I got the Diet Mountain Dew out of my backpack, and I look up, and he's walking through my 20-yard shooting lane, which I wasn't worried. I went to get my camera and stuff on, and like, no big deal. He's fixing to walk up. There was a scrape there too. I said, well, he's going to hit that scrape, and he come up to the scrape. He never done anything to it. He just walked up to the scrape, turned left, and went straight up the mountain. And then the second time was the next morning. I seen him just shortly after daylight. He didn't actually come down to the scrape. He just worked the bottom of the draw. But the point is, and then I ended up killing him up on top, up here, where, let me erase this. As you see this point, the deer, if they're cruising down this way, this one here's a perfect example right here. This is basically, this buck was cruising, checking these points. He was checking these multiple points. And like here, he would come up through an area like this, and then there was this really big one like this, and he would, instead of him walking up this way, coming around, the couple days I seen him, he done this. Then he'd go back up. And then I'm just assuming that he just kept on cruising down, checking these points. Okay. Well, I'd seen him do that 2 days in a row, and I've seen several other bucks do the same thing. And I was like, well, I'll just get up and sit up on the side of this, because every time they'd come down here, and I set up here, but it was so thick I couldn't really do nothing. But anyways, I was going to set up here, but it was too steep. I couldn't go up it. So anyways, I kept looking at it, and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go up this. I walked up the draw, straight up the draw, and I set up towards the top, and sure enough, he come through, and I killed him up on top of this, because they have, I'm not saying that they can't go through this, because they can, but most of the time they're going to go here, or they're going to go here. The problem with being down low is your wind swirls really bad. And if you get up, when you get up high, it creates a funnel right at the head of these draws, where these bucks will, when they're cruising, searching, looking for does, they're checking each one of these points. And right at the head of these draws, if you'll go, and right now is a really good time, if your season's winding down over, our season's still going on, but I guess I'm kind of burnt out on hunting, I guess, whatever. So I haven't been hunting this weekend or even last weekend, but right now is a perfect time to get out, while it's still fresh, the sign's still fresh. And if I almost bet money, if you'll walk up these draws like this. I know this one I think is actually off your property, but if you'll walk up this draw and you'll look in these heads of these draws, somewhere in here there'll be a lot of times there's a rub or two, and a lot of times there's not. People look, they gotta see 15, 20 rubs. You're not gonna see that usually. Usually there's one, maybe two rubs right in there. A lot of times you'll find scrapes. I'll show you where you have this draw, and then you have this flat spot and the head of this point coming out. A lot of times you'll see scrape. There'll be a scrape like right in here, and that's right in where the head of that draw and stuff comes together. This is a really good area, and then right up in here is a really good area, and this is actually on your property. Right over here is a good area to catch them. On the side of this ridge is a good area. I like to really get close to the heads of these draws, because I know bucks will cruise up and down the sides of these ridges, but then I know that these draws that come up like this, they forces these bucks up through an area like this, or an area right in here. They may cross right in here, depending on how that terrain is. That's kind of it's not the head of the draw, but it's kind of a head of this really steep part right here. They may cross here and then check this point and then go to check this point, But that's how I look at stuff like this here. And this is just, it's just cut and dry. The only problem that you will have on this property is when you're hunting, and this is where timing has to be key. When you're hunting this property, especially on a south wind, that's where most of your deer is going to bed on this end, is some type of a southerly wind. The problem is these deer are probably most likely going to be positioned where they see you come in and out of this property on your entrance and exits. Okay, what you do have to enter and exit, really, I'm going to go back to Google Earth here. And we're going to look at that. What you do have as far as entrance and exit is these draws. And I know you can't, and actually this looks to me like, now that we're looking at this draw here, you got these points and stuff down here and these points here. That one spot that I talked about being good is right there close to where it's showing on your property line. That other spot is right down in here somewhere, it looks like. But you could this one here, I don't know, if you can talk to this person, maybe you could access here. But accessing up and down these draws is about the best way. This is really steep terrain. If you can get in there, for the most part, it's going to be really good rut hunting. Like I said, unless you can find where one of these bucks is bedded. If you're looking for does, they'll bed on these points. Problem is, when you get in there and you start hunting them, they're going to pick up that you're coming in and out. And if there's no hunting pressure out around here, they're just going to move over here or whatever. So you've got to be strategic on how you hunt it. You want to hunt it at really good times. I most likely on this property, I would run some trail cameras, on these areas, these heads of these draws, see what I have, maybe up on the side of this ridge here. I might have some trail camera or two. If I could find a scrape, in early part of the rut, we're talking late October, middle of late October, if I can find a scrape. I'd probably hang a camera on that and just see what I have. What time, that the deer's using it, and then hunt it, accordingly. If you do get deer early and late season on this area, you can definitely hunt them. They're going to most likely bed out on these points, like I said, with the wind hitting them in the back, on the sides of these ridges, whether either side, depending on the wind direction. And you can definitely hunt them. You got to plan, coming in and out. Problem is, especially early season, if you come in and out too much and try to hunt too many times, you try to hunt the deer here, you're going to put pressure on the does that are in the area. They are going to come over. you're going to push them off over on some of the other points that's off of this property, and then you're not going to have much deer during the rut. If it's me, I'm going to be strategic for the most part. I may hunt it once or twice early season if I have something. If I don't have anything to hunt there, I'm not even going to hunt it. I'm going to wait and just wait it out, and don't even go in there until the time is right. Late October, I like, and early November. First couple weeks of November, maybe 2.5 weeks of November. So maybe the last week of October. You really got about a three, maybe a 4-week time frame. You hunt the last week of October, November, first 3 weeks in November, and then, that's, kind of a deal where you have to kind of see what you got. To me, it's just a prime rutting type stuff. Now, one thing I will say is, depending on what's down here, you do have this pond. If it's hot, dry, you might be able to set up, especially if you have deer early season, bedded in here close on this point or maybe this point. You get in around this pond, you may have to cut them off in between. If they're coming, I would have a camera or two set up in and around that pond early season. If you're having a buck come into that pond close to in the evening, close to dark, it's definitely something you may be able to hunt. You'll have to be really careful. Right now's the time is get up in here, and it's hard sometimes to see where they're actually bedding, the spot that they're bedding, because they'll bed here, and then they'll bed over here, and then they'll bed here, depending on how the wind's blowing. And they're not bedding in the exact same bed every single time, so they're not as obvious. But one obvious thing is you're going to notice on these points, if they're deer bedding there, bucks anyways, you're going to notice that there's rubs and stuff, and there's a little more concentration. You'll notice there's usually a little more concentration of rubs on these points that you have. If that's the case, you want to get up in there and kind of look at that and see, where them deer can see. Can they see this pond? Is there anywhere that they can't see where you can access stuff like that? And this is something to do right now. It's perfect time of the year. If your hunting season's still in, you're still doing a little hunting, wait, do it February, early March. It's fine. But at some point you want to get in here and you want to walk up on these points, because this is an early season hot spot. Ponds, water source will draw deer early season, especially in hilly terrain like this where there's not a lot of water. I'm not sure when y'all's bow season starts, but ours here in Arkansas starts the last full weekend of September. So here in Arkansas, it could be still nearly 100 degrees. I mean, I shot a doe the second evening of bow season this season, and I think it was like 96 degrees. You can go back and look at one of my videos I made this year. I killed her, actually filmed it, got the shot on film and everything, shot her with a crossbow because I cut my hand with a chainsaw and I couldn't hold my compound. But nevertheless, you can go back and look at that. I shot this doe on a pond. I think that day the high was like 96, and it was hot and just hot. So them deer were gravitating to that pond, and they were in and around that area. This is going to hold deer during that time of year, has the potential to hold deer in this area. There's a possibility they'll bed real close to this pond. There's a possibility they're going to bed where they can see that pond. But you got to, right now, or within the next month or so, get in here, walk up around these points, look and see where these deer are bedded, and look and see where they can see that pond. One thing you got to take, there's a difference in late season, early season. Right now, there's no leaves on the trees, so they can, most likely a deer that's bedded here can see this road. Okay, if they're bedded there right now. Where in the spring, they're not going to be able to see as good. There may be a way that you can get in and out and get a stand set up here. Your stand may have to set there where you're already there. You got to get close to this deer. You need to try to get within 100 yards of them if possible. Okay, and let's just measure that. You know, where's this 100-yard mark from? Oh my goodness, I did it wrong. Hit the wrong button. Let's just measure here. You know, we're 100 yards from this pond. Where's it at? I mean, you know, we're talking, that point is easily, I mean, you're easily within that. So, you know, if a deer's bedded, dang it, I'm trying to drop there. If a deer's bedded right in here, no doubt that if you can get in and out of here, you know, maybe set up in here or something. You know, I don't know, maybe you have to come down here, walk down this fence line. You know, maybe you got to come through here, sneak in really tight to that wood line, you know, set up here. So I'm not sure. It's just something where that's something you're going to have to look at on the ground. If there's deer bedded in here, you know, when this pond's hot. Let's go back. Let me pick this pin up. I mean, here's, you know, there's 100 yards there. You know, I mean, I'm in the center of the pond, so you're probably, you know, up in here. So if there's deer bedded in here, you know, getting up in here, up in this area, you know, if they're bedded up in here and they're using this pond, you know, setting up in here is a good possibility. You know, that's something where you're going to have to look. It looks to me like there's a possibility you can access this, you know, here and then get in here, you know, somehow. You know, you got to be creative possibly. I mean, if there's deer bedded here, you may even have to come here, you know, in here to get to it. Just depends. That's where you got to look and see exactly where them deer tend to bed. There's usually going to be a little bit of, if they're bucks, you're usually going to have some rubs and stuff in and around that area. And you just kind of look, get up there, look and see what they can see, you know. But there's going to be a difference as soon as the green up. If you go now, look at it, and then you're pretty confident, set your cameras there. If you're pulling pictures of bucks at this pond and they're there within 20, 30 minutes after dark, they're in here. You know, they're in here close. Okay, they're somewhere in this area on your property, most likely. You know, and that's a good early season setup. Okay. Other than that, you know, you're probably not got a lot of early season stuff here on this property. You know, I know that there is another water source. I thought I seen it on Cal Topo a while ago. Right here. Let's measure that. And looks, I'm not sure what they've got going on here. It almost looks like they're trying to do some either habitat stuff in and around this pond or what. I'm not sure, but you know, nevertheless, you can't control deer that are over here. There's nothing you can do about it. Let's measure how far apart these are. 700-800 yards. So they're a little ways apart. You know, if there's hunting pressure, if there's pressure in here, and this to me looks, it's a pretty good sized pond. You know, this one looks a little better to me than this. I mean, this is kind of open. They've cleared out around it. It's kind of open. So to me, as a hunting standpoint, this water hole looks a lot better than that other one. Now, you may not be able to hunt right on the pond on this setup. You may have to get in here, you know, back in here and catch these deer, you know, what I consider the red zone. You got to get up 100, 150 yards to their bedding area. The closer the better. The problem is when they're on these hills, it's hard to get super close because they can literally see a long ways. You know, but there could be, you get up here and look around, there could be something that's blocking their view. You know, these pine trees or, I don't know. It's just where you have to get up there and look, or it could be something where you can get in and access certain areas. Look and see, where they're coming in and out at. There should be some type of sign. If there's a lot of does in here, you're going to see a lot of tracks and stuff. You'll be able to tell where there was a bunch of deer. Usually does run in a couple groups. Usually your bucks may be, 2 or 3 bucks. Does could be up, depending on your deer density, could be no telling, especially in the winter. They'll be in bigger groups in the winter. I'm trying to think if there's anything I haven't covered. Oh, your winter time, it's going to be about food. If there's any food out in here, it's going to hold deer. I did notice that over here, there's a lot of open fields, and I don't know if there's some farm stuff, agriculture stuff going on, or if these are just hay fields or what. I always kind of look and see for silos. It just definitely tells me if there's farm agriculture stuff. I mean, it looks like here that this, I can't tell because my map's not updating. But it looks like this is cut, possibly farmed, like it's been cut in rows or something. It's this here too. Map finally updated. So it looks like this is a little bit of agriculture stuff going on here. If that's the case, early season and late season, this stuff's going to have a lot of pull on your deer in your area. Because I'm going to zoom out here and I'm going to show you. A deer's home range is about a square mile. Average size home range is a square mile. So anything within 1 mile, mile and a half of this property is going to have huge draw on your deer. And that's easily within a mile of the center of your property. And then down in here, looks like there's, maybe some, this looks like more like hay fields or whatever. I haven't looked at them real good, but so your home range is, here. But one thing, if you've got deer and does and stuff in the area, this entire area within a mile, you've got draw, bucks all around here. A circle, something like that. You've got drawing power, bucks all in here. They're going to be checking all these points and cruising, all over the place during the rut. And that's where if you can get in these key areas that I talked about, where these points and stuff and these conversion points where multiple points kind of run together in the heads of these draws, on the sides of these ridges, whatever it may be. That's where this is going to help you, during the rut. If these are agriculture areas down in here, like I said, early season is going to have some pull on your deer. Not all of them. You gotta work with what you got. You can't make deer do anything. They're going to do what they do. Their early season, they're not going to cover very big areas. They're going to stay in smaller areas. If they have everything they need, and deer don't have to have farm country. They don't have to have agriculture. I've killed deer every single year, multiple deer, in areas that don't even know what. These deer don't even have a clue that there's such thing as a farm. They don't even know what a tractor is. They don't even know what a field is. These deer have never seen a field in their life. So they'll be there. It's just you got to work with what you got, and you just time it out, understanding that you hunting it at the wrong time could do more damage than anything. Time it out. If you've got deer there early season, go in there, hunt them smart, kill you one, and get out. If you continue to have deer in their early season, keep hunting it. But you don't want to run your deer out. You want to be smart about it. And to me, and just being real, the only thing that I see is you've got that pond, and possibly if there's any type of food, I'm not sure if these are hay fields, maybe there's some, whatever. If there's something like that going on, you may have a little draw on some deer. here in these fields, early season and late season. And then if not, somewhere around here is going to have some food. I know you do have the water source that's going to have draw on deer early season, for sure. So, it looks like there's another little water hole right here, small one. That one's really out in the open. But it's got some, looks like some CRP type thick stuff right in here, old clear cut or something, where it's good habitat, some thick stuff for deer. One thing I forgot to mention is if early season, if you've got gardens, any of these people around here's got gardens, that's going to have draw on deer. Okay, and cutting them off, look and see where they're at on these points, because that's most likely where they're going to bed on this. They're going to bed out on these points and stuff. It's really hilly. If this is really thick, you're going to have deer, probably a lot of deer here. That's actually a point that comes off the side of this ridge, stuff like that. But other than that, one other thing I wouldn't forget during the rut, like I said, the wind swirls real bad on them, but you can kill the deer down in here. A lot of times these bucks will drop down the bottom of these draws, here, these areas. You have a little bit of a funnel, possible, you could look at this here. In occasions, deer will bet on stuff like that. If there's a lot of pressure and they can't get away from it and nobody's bugging them here, it looks like there's a little creek or something there. They'll possibly bed somewhere along this, possibly. But for the most part, your deer's going to bed up on your points like I already discussed. Will, if you have any questions or anything, shoot me an email. You can leave me a comment. Anybody watching this, feel free to leave a comment below in the comment section on YouTube. I hope it helps you out as a lot and points you in the right direction. I really feel like that this type of habitat, as far as the topography goes, this is right in my wheelhouse. This is what I understand really well. It's almost easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's just almost easy to look at it and say, hey, this is where deer do. I've hunted it. The topography basically puts the deer in certain areas, and they're on it. I'm not saying it's easy because they are tough to hunt. When they're up high on this area and they got the wind to their back, anytime, it's just like when you're hunting and you're up in a deer stand and the deer's walking, coming by. You're up above that deer. You have a really good viewpoint of it. You can see a lot of things. When them deer are bedded up high on these points and they're looking out below and everything below them is really a lot lower. I mean, if we go back here and we look at this Cal Topo here, I mean, from here to here, you're talking 40-foot drop from here to here. From here, from this point right in here, this line right here, this contour line here to here, I believe that's 100 foot. I mean, these deer are looking, it's 80 to 100 foot from here to here. They have a huge vantage point when they're up on here and you're down in here trying to access and get up on these deer. They literally can see a long ways, and it's really easy if you'll get up there and you'll look at it and you'll go, wow, and you find where these deer are bedding and you're going, man, how in the heck do you even get to them? It's almost impossible. You can't sneak up on them, because they can see you coming from so far away. You can't sneak up behind them where they can't see because they're going to smell you coming. It's a tough deal, but they're by far not unkillable. I mean, when you realize that the rut's coming and these bucks are going to be sent checking and they're going to be checking these, what's the routes that they take? They're going to take the heads of these points. This right here is perfect example right there. It's right there on your property. Right in here is a perfect example. That's right on the edge of that. I mean, you've got a point coming off here. You got a point coming off here. You've got multiple bedding areas here, where these deer are going to want to bed. And then they're going to come through this area, okay? And same thing here. You've got multiple types of areas where these deer would want to bed. And they're going to come through that area, And then also on the side of this ridge where it drops off, these multiple points drops off here. These little mini points, it kind of drops off the side of this ridge. And then the bucks cruise up and down. This is it's just classic. So anyways, Will, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope everyone else enjoys the video. And actually, I just realized over here I was drawing just off the map here. There's just several points over here just right off the screen. I was actually circling them. But it's just a lot of bedding points for the deer to bed on just right off the screen here. Maybe 100 yards off the screen, 50 yards off the screen. Just multiple points where these deer can bed on. I just realized I was actually drew all that off the screen, but that's what I was drawing. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Will, I hope it helped you out. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. I'll help you out best I can. Anyone else, leave comments below. This is a video analysis I do. Offer them on my website, deerhuntingschool.com. I wish you luck, Will. If you kill some next year, send me a picture. You can keep in contact with me if you want throughout the summer and stuff as you're kind of developing. If you have any questions that come up during the summer, hey, I found this or that, or whatever, shoot me an email. I'll help you out best I can, like I said. Now's the time to where on something like this, if you don't know where them deer are bedded, now's the time to kind of figure out where they're bedded. I pointed it out. I almost guarantee you, if you go in and you check all these points and stuff, and up on the side of this ridge in here, you're going to find some buck sign. It's going to concentrate in and around where these bucks are bedded. If there's a buck bedded there, if there's a couple bucks bedded there, it's going to concentrate some sign. Usually in and around, right around the bedding sign, you're going to have multiple rubs. I've seen as few as just a couple, and I've seen as many as 100 in a very small area. Where you can literally almost stand in one spot and count 30 to 100 rubs. And usually I see that as when you have a bachelor group bedded there. That's a lot of times that's that early season stuff. You have a bachelor group, there's bedded there, and they're all doing a lot of rubbing in a smaller area. I feel like when the larger the bachelor group, the more rubs you have, and the smaller the bachelor group, or even if it's a single buck, the less rubs you have. But anyways, Will, best of luck. Hope everybody enjoyed the video. Hope it helps everybody out a little bit. Have a good day, and bye-bye.